Welcome to our coverage of the debate between Democrat Lois Frankel and Republican Adam Hasner in Congressional District 22. It is one of a series of debates we are presenting as part of our Democracy 2012 coverage of the election. This debate is taking place at the offices of our news partners at the Palm Beach Post.
Good morning, and welcome to the congressional debate between Democrat Lois Frankel and Republican Adam Hasner, sponsored by the Palm Beach Post and WPTV News Channel 5. I'm Randy Schultz, editor of the editorial page of the Palm Beach Post. I'll be moderating the one-hour debate. Questioning the candidates will be Palm Beach Post political reporter George Bennett and News Channel 5 anchor Roxanne Stein. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question. The other candidate will have 1 minute for rebuttal. At the end of the debate, the candidates will ask I reserve the right to ask follow-up questions, and we will enforce the time limit. The first question is for Adam Hasner, and it comes from George Bennett.
Thanks. The economy and jobs appear to be the biggest thing on voters' minds, so let's start with that. You've been a vocal critic of the stimulus bill and the Democratic approach to fixing the economy. You were a member of the Republican majority in Tallahassee at a time when unemployment in the state was higher than it was nationally. Given all that, if you're elected to Congress, what concrete, specific things do you propose to do to improve the economy and create jobs?
Well, I think as I travel throughout these communities and get the opportunity to talk to so many small business owners, I think what they need is certainty. They're unsure about what the future is going to bring them in terms of taxes and regulations. And I think the first thing we need to do here in our country is get our fiscal house in order. People need to know that there aren't going to be huge tax increases looming because of the annual trillion-dollar deficits. We need pro-growth policies, reforming the tax code to lower rates and broaden the base, eliminating loopholes and exemptions. We need to right-size regulations that are currently stifling innovation and investment. Too much red tape and bureaucracy, too many permits that small business owners have to get in order to get into business. We need to have a domestic energy policy here in our country for more made-in-America energy, oil and natural gas exploration, doing it responsibly and doing it environmentally responsibly, and also doing it in a way that's going to create jobs and be good for our economy. I think the biggest thing, though, is providing that certainty for small business owners so that they go out and hire new employees and can invest in new equipment. They're not going to do it if there are more taxes and more regulations coming on them. I spoke to a small business owner down in Pompano the other day who said that if taxes go up, he's going to have to lay people off. High gas prices right now are also a major problem. A woman down in Delray Beach who owns her own cake shop is struggling because of the high cost, not just of traveling from place to place, but also because of the fact that the cost of goods have gone up. And so we need to get our tax policy right, we need to right-size regulations, we need to get energy prices down, and we need to get America's fiscal house in order. That type of certainty is going to provide the confidence that small business owners need to get our economy moving again.
Do I get a minute?
You do.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having us here for this discussion today. I think there's two problems, big fiscal problems facing this country. One is our deficit, and the other is unemployment. And the best way to fix both first is to get people back to work. And we take a little different approach. But what I suggest is the right way to go is to invest on our infrastructure, our roads and our bridges, get our engineers and our laborers back to work, invest in innovation. So here in America, we discover the next internet, the cure for Alzheimer's, and we focus on education. If we're going to make those discoveries, let's have our kids grow up and be the best and the brightest so they can compete in the global market. And then we're going to give tax breaks. Let's give it to companies that keep jobs here and that'll work with colleges to help them retrain workers that need new skills.
We take a quick 30 seconds, actually. We didn't hear a specific tax policy from either one of you. In 30 seconds each, could you first, Mr. Hasner, and then Ms. Frankel, tell us one specific tax change you would make?
I will. First, I just want to know where Ms. Frankel is going to get the money in order to pay for more infrastructure and more roads and bridges, considering we already have trillion-dollar deficits as it is. But we also have a corporate income tax rate right now that is the highest in the industrialized world. We need to lower that rate. We need to make America more competitive for businesses to be able to stay here and create jobs so they're not going overseas where it's more advantageous for taxes and regulations and wages. America workers are the best in the world, but if our system puts them at a disadvantage, we're going to lose those jobs. That's why we need to reform our tax code.
All right, and Ms. Frankel?
Well, first I want to tell you something. I'm going to take that money, that nation building we're spending in Afghanistan. I'd like to see it spent here in America. But one of the first things I would do is to stop giving tax breaks to companies that take jobs offshore. Number one, I actually agree. We should lower corporate rates, but let's eliminate those loopholes that are not fair and that are basically paid for by high-priced lobbyists. And I'll tell you what I won't do. I'm not going to go along with raising taxes on the middle class.
Okay. The next question is for Lois Frankel, and it comes from George Bennett.
Sure. One of the ways that you tried to improve the economy when you were mayor of West Palm Beach was by attracting the animation studio Digital Domain to the city. And while you were mayor, the city pledged $10 million in cash, $15 million in loans, and a prime piece of real estate worth about $10 million to bring Digital Domain here.
Right.
Later, after that, the executives and their spouses from Digital Domain gave $20,000 to your congressional campaign. And then last month, Digital Domain filed for bankruptcy. It looks like the city is going to be out $2 million. The future of that land, whether the city can get it back, is in doubt. At the very least, it's going to cause a lot of legal fees. Given all that, should the public have concern about your judgment in dealing with public money?
Well, first of all, let me just say that probably the two most disappointed people in the room about Digital Domain is myself and Mr. Hasner. Because when he was the leader, the Republican leader in the legislature, he voted to give Digital Domain $20 million so that they could set up a studio in Port St. Lucie. And incidentally, there were no safeguards to that. What we did in West Palm Beach, which is, look, we took a risk. I'm disappointed with what happened with this company. However, here's the bright side of it. We now have Florida State University here, with one of the top film schools in the country. They are guaranteed to stay here a minimum of 3 years, but they're moving right ahead with a digital program that I believe in the long run is going to create jobs here in West Palm Beach. And we built in safeguards, so I have to take issue with you. Our land is safe, and we didn't give $10 million cash to Digital Domain. In fact of the matter is they've gotten no cash because they haven't met the benchmarks that they were supposed to make.
Well, Ms. Frankel should know a little bit better. She served in the state legislature, and she knows that the legislature doesn't appropriate money to companies like Digital Domain, and I never took a vote to give Digital Domain money. You were around when Enterprise Florida was created by the state legislature. The money was funded and provided to Charlie Crist in the governor's office, who then went out and gave the money to Digital Domain. But if you noticed, Ms. Frankel did not respond to the question about the fact that John Texter donated $20,000 to her campaign. I never met John Texter, never asked him for any money for my campaign, never received any money for my campaign. But I think it goes along the lines of the culture of corruption that we've seen in West Palm Beach for far too long, the pay-to-play politics. And I think the people of West Palm Beach need to have answers to the questions of, why did John Texter get the money from the city of West Palm Beach, and was it in response to the $20,000 in campaign contributions that he gave to Ms. Frankel's campaign?
The next question is for Adam Hasner, and it comes from Roxanne Stein.
You know, I'd like to follow up, if I may, to that, because I'm not sure the specific question was answered. Should there be better vetting processes in place when you are talking about $20 million, you've got Enterprise Florida, and you've got these companies that are getting these types of incentives. They promise to bring jobs, but this money goes out the window in a time when counties are struggling to make budgets. People are struggling to put food on the table. Should there be a better, some other safeguards in place when we're talking about not having safeguards? To Mr. Hasner first, please.
Well, I think you have to go back to 2008 when everything changed in the economy. And in the state legislature, we were working hard to balance our budget. And we were trying to make sure that we were going to create private sector jobs to get the economy going. We were seeing the direction we were heading in. There was money that was unused from prior year's appropriations. And Governor Christ came to the legislature and said that he had this secret economic development project that he wanted to be able to use some of that money for. The state legislature kept the economic development funds in that pot. And Governor Christ and his office and the Office of Economic Development and Enterprise Florida went out and made that investment in digital domain. Now, we've done a lot of great things as it relates to economic development, and if you think specifically, I was in the legislature during the time that we helped to recruit the Scripps Research Institute to our community, as well as many of the other bioscience institutes, biotech institutes throughout the state of Florida. So there are good investments that can be made in order to attract the types of transformational opportunities to grow our economy and create jobs. But I think the question goes back to the fact that John Texter donated $20,000 to Ms. Frankel's campaign. I've never met him, so I don't know what he received in return or what that exchange was. But I think that's what really troubles people more, is that when there's that pay-to-play type of scenario. And I think when it comes to economic development initiatives, we need to make sure that those proper strategies are in place in order to prevent that. And we've done that in these instances, and I think that in this instance from the state legislature, you have an issue where the governor's office gave that money, the city of West Palm Beach gave that money, and Ms. Frankel's campaign ended up with $20,000.
Okay. Okay, first let me just say this. I believe that West Palm Beach put in a very good tight safeguards in this deal. Much better than the state and much better than Port St. Lucie. The people, and it's disappointing, but the folks who lost the money were not West Palm, it was Port St. Lucie in the state of Florida. They lost their $60 million investment. West Palm Beach investment was based on benchmarks. What we paid for is Florida State University, and that's what we have. But listen, Mr. Hasner, you're being very disingenuous about campaign contributions. First of all, let me just say this. When the digital domain deal was going, I wasn't running for anything. In fact, my congressman was Alan West. And it wasn't Alan West, it was Ron Klein. But that's not the point. All my contributions have been disclosed. You can go and look on a piece of paper and see who's given contributions to Lois Frankel. Mr. Hasner, by proxies, you have now spent almost $300,000 to $400,000 from super PACs with fancy names. We don't know who the donors are. They could be billionaires. They could be corporations. We don't know what their interest is. That's what's corrupting politics today. That's what's hijacking democracy. These super PACs, shadowy groups that come out of nowhere.
Let's hold it there, but let's do 30 seconds more. Mr. Hasner first, and then Ms. Frankel on this issue of contributions to your various campaigns, and then we'll go on. Please.
Well, all of my campaign contributions are disclosed, just like Ms. Frankel's. I'd actually like to see some major comprehensive campaign finance reform so that there's more transparency, so that every contribution under $50 has to be reported as well. And these claims of super PACs that I have nothing to do with, all of those donors are disclosed as well. And so you're trying to divert and distract attention from the fact of the campaign contributions that you receive from Mr. Texter in relationship to digital domain. I'm all for campaign.
Thank you, and now 30 seconds from Ms. Frankel.
Listen, we're all for campaign finance, but listen, it's time for you to not be so disingenuous. When you were the leader of the Republican Party, the leader, where all the legislation comes your way, you raised $1 million for a state house race. $1 million. That's unprecedented from every special interest group in this state that came before you. So listen, here's what we can both agree on. I think that there's too much money in politics, and it needs to be reformed. And I'll take the pledge to try to reform it if you will.
All right,
to.
A mutual pledge. There we go. The next question is for Lois Frankel from Roxanne Stein.
Florida is once again at the top of the list when it comes to foreclosures, and despite some new programs and mandates, there are homeowners who cannot get banks to respond fast enough to save their homes. And as a member of Congress, what would you do to help these homeowners?
Well, let me just say this. As mayor of West Palm Beach, what I saw was that This home foreclosure is not only affecting the families that lived in the homes, but the entire neighborhoods. Because when a house goes in foreclosure and the grass gets overgrown and the pool gets moldy, it affects the entire neighborhood. So this is a neighborhood problem. And what got us into this fix, obviously, was I think some greedy lenders and securitization of mortgages. Here's number one. We need to make sure that whoever owns homes keeps them in repair so the neighborhoods stay in repair. And in terms of the federal government, the president had some programs, and I think we need to work with banks, with Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae to encourage our lenders to restructure our loans, reduce principals, reduce interest payments so that homeowners can make those payments and stay in their home. Maybe take a look at bankruptcy laws to see whether or not they need to be changed so that we can force some changes and have the homeowners who's going bankruptcy be able to keep their homes. Those are the kinds of things because home ownership is important. It stabilizes our economy. It stabilizes our neighborhoods. It's the place of refuge for people. And I think it's very, very important that it remains a staple of American life.
Mr. Hasner.
Well, I know a little bit about this issue personally because my wife and I, the home that we own is underwater, just like a lot of other people that I talk to every single day. Wasn't really by fault of our own. People had bought homes and the price and the values declined, and now everyone is struggling to pay the mortgage and keep current. What concerns me most, though, are the people who are really trying to play by the rules and make sure that they are responsible and are making those payments. And one of the biggest problems when they go to try to get refinancing, and I had a conversation with some people who run a small community bank down in Boca Raton the other day, is that people need to get a new appraisal for their home in order to refinance. The new rules and regulations that have put in have actually made it more difficult for those homeowners who are playing by the rules and who want to stay in. And I think some of the big reforms we need to do regarding the government-sponsored entities like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is reduce their role in the community or reduce their role in the industry and get banks to have more skin in the game as it relates to the homeowner loans that they're providing in the community.
The next question is for Adam Hasner from George Bennett.
Sure. Let's talk about Medicare for a minute. You've said that the health care bill, which your opponent supports and you oppose, you've said that it is a $716 billion raid on Medicare. On the other hand, you supported the Ryan budgets in 2011 and 2012, which include that same $716 billion in future Medicare savings. How is it consistent to oppose the $716 billion savings in the health care bill but support it in the Ryan budget?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question, George, and I'm sure Roxana knows a lot about this as well from all of her years of reporting on health care related issues. But if there was a plan to improve access to care and make health care more affordable, the health care law that we currently have was not the best way to do it, because it does increase taxes, it does put more burdens on business, and it does raise $716 billion today to pay for the expansion of health care coverage for others. And it takes it from programs like Medicare Advantage and others. What I believe is that that's money you can't double count. You can't say that it's going to strengthen Medicare and at the same time use it to expand. The plan that I support very simply does this. It protects everybody who is 55 and over with no changes to their benefits whatsoever. You're going to hear some scare tactics from Ms. Frankel saying that Adam Hasner wants to end Medicare as we know it. But here's what we know from the facts. Medicare is on a path to insolvency as it currently is. There's 10,000 people retiring every single day. There's 8% healthcare inflation. If we do nothing like Ms. Frankel proposes, then Medicare as we know it is going to end. What my plan does, and it's a bipartisan plan supported by Democrat healthcare experts and Republican healthcare experts. And it's actually an idea that was first introduced by Democrats called premium support. I know Ms. Frankel is going to try to scare you and call it vouchers and try to get you upset about it. But the fact of the matter is if we do nothing, Medicare is not going to be there for generations such as mine and those who are younger. And so we need to save and strengthen Medicare for those who are 55 and over today with no changes, and we need to make sure that we protect that health security promise for people who are younger and future generations. And the best way to do it is through a bipartisan plan that includes premium support so that people who need the health care get it, and more importantly, so that those who have more illnesses get more premium support, those who are more wealthy get less premium support. And it's a plan supported by both Democrats and Republicans.
Okay. The next question is for Lois Frankel.
Should I answer that?
Okay, I'm sorry. Pardon me.
That's okay. Well, you didn't really answer the question because, Mr. Hasner, you know that it's not true that, first of all, the plan I support did not take one dime from Medicare, not one dime. What it did is close the donut hole so seniors pay less money for their prescription drugs. It took excess profits from insurance companies. It allows providers to lower their fees because we're giving them a lot more customers. And you take that, you support the Ryan budget that takes $716 billion. That same $716 billion, instead of saving and extending the life of Medicare, you give it back to the very, very rich in tax breaks. That I don't agree with that, and I'd love to talk about my plan that I support for Medicare. I think it's very important, but I see I ran out of time. Would I be allowed to do that?
Why don't we take 30 seconds more? You can you can offer yours, and then we'll let Mr. Hasner respond.
Listen,
stick to the 30 seconds.
Just to say, you know, his plan. It's not my scare tactics about your plan. AARP, which represents 40 million seniors, and they're nonpartisan, calls your plan risky. Says it undermines Medicare. Takes vouchers that are going to cost seniors thousands of dollars more a year. It's going to put them at the mercy of private insurance. Here's what I support. First of all, I will not support cutting benefits. We should cut waste. And we need to, this is important, we need to reform the way we deliver health care. We need to focus on efficiencies, we need to focus on prevention, we need to focus on outcomes rather than fee-for-service. We can do that. We're doing that here in this county, and we're doing it all over the country. Okay. That's the way we should go.
All right, and we will now we'll give him 60 seconds.
Ms. Frankel and I do agree. We need to change the way that our healthcare delivery system works. She supports more government control and more individuals in Washington dictating that. I support more competition and choice. I think the fact is that Medicare spends about $500 billion today. It's going to spend about $1 trillion by 2020. Eliminating all the waste and fraud and abuse, which I think we both agree on, isn't going to change the fiscal reality that Medicare is on a pathway toward insolvency. That's not me saying it. That's the Medicare trustees have predicted by 2024. The plan that I support strengthens Medicare today. It doesn't take or redirect the $716 billion like the plan you support. It puts it back into the Medicare trust fund. But what's most important is, what are we going to do after 2024? I have a plan to make sure that Medicare is there for those who are going to come after in future generations, people my age and younger.
Okay.
Ms. Frankel doesn't have a plan for that,
all right.
And that's what's going to end Medicare as we know it.
There we go. And now we will get to the question for Ms. Frankel from George Bennett.
Well, my question is in that vein. I mean, you have made it clear what your opposition to the Ryan plan and your defense of the $716 billion in cuts. Given all that, the Medicare trustees say, even with all that and the changes in the health care law, in 2024, 12 years from now, Medicare won't be able to pay its full benefits. What specifically do you support that would take Medicare beyond 2024 to make it there for future retirees?
And let me just say, he has no plan to do anything to start till 2024. A very risky plan which will lead seniors back to poverty, which they were in 75 years ago before Social Security and Medicare. But let me just say this, and I want to reiterate, Medicare is the health care for my 87-year-old mother, for millions of seniors. And it will be for millions of seniors, whether it's in 10 years or 20 years or whatever. Because you can't, you know what, you can't go out and get a job when you're 85 years old to pay for a hip replacement. So what do we need to do? We need to slow the growth of the cost of health care. We agree on that. We need to go after waste and abuse, not just after the fact, but before the fact. And I have given many examples of that prior to this debate, but I think what's even as important is we have to start to look at a different way to deliver our health care. Let's look at prevention. You know, I was talking yesterday to one of the officers of the Palm Beach Medical Society, and right here in Palm Beach County, they're about to undertake a program called Triple Aim. It's going to be aimed at folks who have diabetes, and they believe that if they focus on prevention, if they focus on diet and exercise and people getting to the doctor on time, they're going to be able to cut the cost of diabetes by 20 to 30%. And just think about that. If we can get this country on the path to health, if we can ensure more Americans going into their Medicare years so that they are healthier, we have to do this together. We can't do it by cutting benefits. When people are sick, they need to go to the doctor, they need their prescription drugs, they need their hospitals. But we can change the way we deliver health care so that we're focusing on prevention, we're focusing on outcomes, where incentives to doctors are keep people healthy, not keep testing and testing and testing.
Mr. Hasner.
Thank you. Let me say this, that the scare tactics, Ms. Frankel, just aren't going to work. No one wants to take away anyone's Medicare. My mom relies on Medicare. I want to make sure Medicare is going to be there for you as well. But I'm also concerned about whether Medicare is going to be there for future generations. And so that's why the bipartisan plan I support is one that saves and strengthens Medicare for current beneficiaries, and more importantly, transforms that program and protects that promise of health security for future generations. But Medicare is one of the driving costs in our federal deficits and in our debt. That's why we have to get this under control. I agree with you that the diabetes epidemic is real. We need to have the type of preventive care and be able to get physicians, incentivize them. But what your plan actually does is it pays physicians less. The $716 billion that you take to expand access to health care and pay for all those programs, it lowers physician and hospital reimbursements. Just like in the Medicaid program. That's why physicians don't take Medicaid anymore. I know a little bit about this because I've worked with physicians in hospitals. Reducing payments to them is only going to make access to coverage more difficult for those people who need it.
If we may, a 30-second follow-up to each of you. For you, Mr. Hasner, on that topic, you have mentioned the looming insolvency of Medicare. Given the fact that estimates are that the Affordable Care Act, which you want to repeal or have said you should be repealed, extends the life of Medicare, can you explain the contradiction between those two statements?
Well, I don't believe it's a contradiction. The current law calls for the slower rate of growth. What Ms. Frankel's plan does is it takes the savings from that slower rate of growth and pays for expanding Medicaid and pays for many of these new programs. The slower rate of growth, the plan that I support, it takes that money and puts it back into the Medicare Trust Fund to protect the programs for seniors today. The problem that we have isn't necessarily in the next 10 years. It's after 2024 when Medicare goes bankrupt, and that's when we need to have a new plan in place to protect that promise.
And for you, Ms. Frankel, you support the Affordable Care Act,
yes,
which creates exchanges, marketplaces for people to use to buy health care. But you oppose the Ryan Medicare plan, which creates exchanges for people to buy insurance. Now, if that's okay for people who aren't on Medicare, why is it okay for people who are? Why is it? If it's okay for people who aren't on Medicare, why is it okay for people who are?
Because here's the difference. The Obamacare plan that you're talking about are going to take 33 million more people and put them into the insurance market. 33 million people who are now going to emergency rooms when they don't need to, or when they should have gone to a primary care doctor, costing the system millions of dollars. And so what you're putting in a younger group of people into the market, people who are costing us a lot more money by not being in the market.
Okay.
Very quickly, please. Okay. The Ryan plan takes our oldest and our sickest now, and now it's two-tier.
Okay. And
Randy,
15 seconds.
if I could just,
15 seconds back.
just go back to this issue again. The bipartisan Ryan plan does not do anything, and there's no changes for anyone 55 and over. The 33 million people that you're talking about that are going to be brought into the system, I don't think anybody really believes that we can add 33 million people into the system without increasing cost on taxpayers.
All right.
And small businesses, Randy, small businesses are going to be letting people off of their health insurance.
We're going to be back into 5-second increments now if we're not careful. Okay. Thank you. The next question is for Adam Hasner from Roxanne Stein.
I want to stay on the health care theme, but we're going to step away from Medicare if we can for a minute. All week long, in the past week, I've been asking viewers to email or Facebook questions. I have not really edited them or recrafted the wording because I want you both to get a feel for what people are feeling. In this question, you used the words waste and abuse. It has to do with health care from a Facebook friend. And I'm going to read it pretty much as is and maybe translate a little bit. When will the government stop giving lifelong health care or excellent benefits to former members of Congress and make them COBRA, and other members of the government, make them COBRA or buy benefits like the rest of us? We can't afford to pay for it. That money could be used elsewhere.
Roxanne, thanks for that question from your Facebook friend. One of the biggest dysfunctions in Washington is that the politicians that we send up there don't live by the same set of rules as everybody else. I've heard this complaint everywhere I've gone. It's why my campaign has some very simple commitments. I've said that I'll voluntarily term limit myself after 8 years because I don't think we should have politicians in Washington who grow out of touch with their local community and the issues of the country. It's why I've said I would never vote for or accept a pay increase as a member of the United States House of Representatives because people don't get to increase their own pay at their own jobs. It's why I've said I'll never accept a congressional pension, which it only takes 5 years in order to qualify for full congressional pension benefits. That's not something that your Facebook friend or anybody else out there has access to. Washington needs to live by the same set of rules. When people have jobs and they don't do their job at work, they don't get paid. It's why I think that when Washington doesn't pass a budget, like they haven't passed a budget in over 3 years now, members of Congress shouldn't be paid. It's called no budget, no pay. It's that simple. And I think your Facebook friend's frustration is exactly what I hear from people all the time. It's about the fact that Washington doesn't live by the same set of rules, and it's why I've made these commitments that are so important. They don't just make me different from Ms. Frankel, they make me different from so many of the other politicians on both sides of the aisle.
But you're talking about what you will do. Will you take that to the floor and say, we can't give ourselves raises?
I will. And that's the leadership by example that I demonstrated during my time in the state legislature. I led the effort to cut my own pay during my time in Tallahassee. Over 8 years, my salary in the state legislature went up $300 in total. During Ms. Frankel's 12 years in the state legislature, her salary nearly doubled, over $15,000. And as mayor of West Palm Beach, her salary increased 40%. Politicians need to live by the same set of rules as everybody else. I'm going to lead by example in Washington, not just for myself, but to get others to do that as well.
Okay. Ms. Frankel.
Well, thank you. You know, first of all, I want to just say this. I think your pledges are very admirable and worth considering. But listen, I think what's more important are his real pledges that he's been making for the past year, which is, number one, the pledge to Grover Norquist, the signed pledge in Grover Norquist lockbox that will say, you know what, before I would ever give a tax to the very rich, I'd rather cut Alzheimer research. I'd rather cut loans from students. I'd rather raise the cost of prescription drugs. Your pledge, he's the co-chairman of the Cut, Cap, and Balance Committee, which basically says, you know what, even if we're facing a war, or even if we're facing a hurricane disaster, we can't raise taxes. Listen, those are the kinds of pledges that are going to hurt this country. In terms of playing by the same rules, you know what, I believe that anyone in government owes an honest day's work to their citizens.
All right.
And
thank you. And the next question is to Ms. Frankel from Roxanne Stein.
I want to go to another looming insolvency, and that's Social Security. It's also running out of money, yet Congress cut the amount of payroll taxes a couple of years ago that go to the Social Security fund. What would you do to make sure Social Security stays solvent?
Well, first of all, let me just start and say that, 75 years ago, when we did not have Social Security, we probably had more than half of our seniors living in poverty. Today, that's maybe down to 10 or 15%. And most people on Social Security, especially people who live in who are not married, they depend on Social Security for their life to live. And so, as a non-starter, we must do everything reasonably possible to make sure Social Security maintains its solvency and is there here for generations to come. Fortunately, right now, it's not the looming immediate problem. What I can't go for is privatization that's been suggested in budget plans that Mr. Hasner has in the past. I don't know where he is today, but in the past he's supported. But I do think this. I think that there are reasonable ways to looking at rates that we can maintain the solvency. In terms of cutting the payroll tax, the payroll tax cut, probably it may be time to get that back on track.
Okay, Mr. Hasner.
Well, thank you. Roxanne, I'm not sure that I heard any specific policy solution in there, but Social Security is facing a looming fiscal crisis. We know that it's now bringing in less money than it's paying out. It's adding to the national debt, or to the annual deficit and to the national debt. We have far too few workers that are out there actually supporting those who are in retirement. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that none of the plans that I would support would have any impact on people who are in retirement or who are nearing retirement. But we have to face the fiscal reality that if we don't do something about this in the future, it's not going to be there. We need to have an honest conversation, and I support about how do we raise the retirement age? How do we recalculate benefits? How do we means test so that people who are more affluent get less and people who are less affluent get more? Those are real ways to help put Social Security back on a path to fiscal solvency. I know my opponent might want to use scare tactics and try to tell people I want to take away their Social Security, but if we don't address this issue, this is going to be a big problem for seniors, not just in the future, but today as well.
Okay, and the next question is for Adam Hasner from George Bennett.
Sure. On that fiscal theme, you have signed the Grover Norquist pledge. You oppose any tax increases, and you've also been a supporter of the balanced budget amendment. The deficit in the year that just concluded was $1.1 trillion. What are some specific things that you would support cutting from government to bring the deficit down?
Well, I think first and foremost you have to look at the two different approaches. The approach that Ms. Frankel supports increases government spending about 4.5% to 5% per year. I believe we have to responsibly reduce spending, get revenues more aligned with expenses, and we need to grow government at a much slower pace. We also need to get the economy moving again and get people back to work and creating jobs so that they're paying payroll taxes, so that they're back out there working again. That over a longer period of time is a much better proposal than the proposal that Ms. Frankel has, which is increasing taxes on small business owners who make over $200,000 or $250,000 for a family. I believe just yesterday a report came out that showed so much of the waste and inefficiency in our federal government. So many of these programs that are so laughable. Yes, we need to eliminate those. Yes, we need to responsibly reduce defense spending and do it in a way that doesn't jeopardize our national security. But 62% of our federal budget is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and entitlement programs. And those are the real cost drivers in our budget. So we need to do everything we can to save and protect those programs for those who rely on them today, and we need to strengthen them in the future. But we can't stay along the same path of the trillion-dollar-a-year deficits and the $16 trillion debt that we've now run up. It's endangering our future. It's endangering our economy. I just don't believe that taxes are the right way, increasing taxes are the right way to grow the economy. President Obama said it back in 2010. He said, let's not raise taxes when the economy's bad. I agree with him. It's still not a good economy. Unemployment's still far too high. I will say this about pledges. When I got into this race, there are far too many pledges out there. That's why I decided not to sign any pledges and just make those commitments that I made about making Washington live by the same set of rules as everybody else. And I hope Ms. Frankel will join me in not accepting a pay increase or a pension from Congress.
All right. And Ms. Frankel.
So when President Clinton finished his presidency, we were in a surplus. I wanted to say this: the deficit is not being caused by, not going to be helped by kicking grannies out of nursing homes and cutting off loans to kids and raising the cost of prescription drugs, which what you do by adopting the bold, what you call is the bold Ryan budget. How did we get into this deficit? 2 wars that were not paid for. We let our safeguards up on banks. We had to do a bank bailout. We gave tax cuts for the very rich. We had a housing crisis that threw us into a huge recession and huge unemployment. So you know what the first thing I would do, Mr. Bennett? I would get our folks out of Afghanistan as quickly as possible. I would stop that nation building there, and I would start the nation building right here in the United States of America, and I would invest in the future, and this country's future, and our economy, and that means we can get people back to work.
Randy, can I just address one issue on the spending?
Perhaps later. I'm sure it'll come up in a question. This next question is for Ms. Frankel from George Bennett.
Yeah, I got another spending thing, so you guys can have at it again. To be specific, do you support the President's call to raise taxes on people who make more than $250,000 a year? And then how does that fit into the overall, even if that were approved, that's only maybe a tenth of the deficit. So what else would be done to reduce the deficit?
Well, can I just say, I don't have a 999 plan like some people might have. However, here's what I think. We have to take a balanced approach towards getting our deficit down and getting people back to work. And that means having an open, first of all, we shouldn't do anything right now that are going to cause us to go deeper into a recession. And so, first of all, I'm against raising any taxes on the middle class right now. And I agree we should restructure our tax system so that it's fair and that we encourage jobs to stay here. But I'm going to, maybe I sound like a broken record, but I do believe that the future of this economy in this United States, for us to be able to compete with China, with Germany, with Singapore, is we need to invest in our children's education so that they're going to be the ones that are going to discover the next internet, the cleaner, cheaper fuel, the cure for Alzheimer. And that is the way that we're going to have jobs in America, by raising a workforce that can compete in a global market. And that means we need to continue to invest in innovation and right now in infrastructure building so we can get all those laborers, the engineers, the architects here in Florida that have been out of work, back to work.
Okay. Mr. Hasner.
Let me say something, George, that Ms. Frankel won't say. Both parties are responsible for the fiscal mess that we're in. Republicans and George Bush ran up deficits that are unsustainable. Democrats and President Obama have done the same. But today, Ms. Frankel has said something a little bit different than what she's been saying out on the campaign trail. I've heard Ms. Frankel time and again say the rich need to pay their fair share. People over $250,000 a year, they're the small business owners. When I'm talking to the small business owner every day out throughout our communities, they can't afford a tax increase. They know that if they get a hit with a tax increase, they're going to lay people off. And going back to the issue of your tax increase, it only addresses, like George said, 1/10 of the deficit. But yet you provided absolutely no specifics about reducing spending. That's what needs to be done. I support a balanced approach as well. responsibly reducing spending, getting revenues more aligned with expenses, and doing it in a way by getting our economy going again, getting people back to work. That's the best recipe to get revenues back to historical averages and spending back to historical averages.
We're trying to get everything in on our agenda. If it's okay with everybody, could the next two questions go with a minute response and a 30-second rebuttal? The next question is for Adam Hasner from Roxanne Stein.
Mr. Hasner will stick with the economy and go to the high-speed rail proposal. The state recently turned down $2.4 billion in federal funding that would have helped to build the high-speed rail service, with one leg of that going from Miami to Orlando. Construction would, of course, stimulate jobs. Millions of people go from South Florida to Orlando every year. It would cut down on congestion. You have, at one point, supported the money and then recently did not support the funding coming from the government, from the feds. Would you, if you were in Congress, now look for a way to get federal money to help make sure this is done, to bring jobs to the area and help stimulate the economy?
Well, when I was in the state legislature, I was known as somebody who really was a leader on innovation and new technologies, particularly in transportation. And I was somebody who thought that at the time, maybe something like high-speed rail could work. But fiscal realities changed from the initial initiation of it until more recently. And the fact is, and I think people at home understand this, they know they have to live within their means. They know they can't afford things when it's not in their budget. And we understand that if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And that's why I wouldn't support any more additional money being spent on it in Florida or anywhere else for that matter. We have $1 trillion a year deficits right now. Those deficits are piling up. We need to responsibly reduce spending. And while there might be a lot of important programs out there that people like, that people support, we're going to have to make some tough decisions to prioritize spending, just like families do at home every day, just like small businesses do at home or at work every day. We need to prioritize that spending. And high-speed rail isn't something that
Very good. And the next question is for Ms. Frankel from Roxanne Stein.
I shouldn't answer that question?
Sorry.
Okay. So, but I'll answer it very quickly. Rick Scott turning down the money for that speed train, I can say it very quickly. It was dumb.
Okay.
Okay.
Next question. There we go. What a blessedly short answer.
Help us on time.
Ms. Frankel, I want to go to offshore drilling.
Sure.
Traditionally, drilling off the coast of Florida for oil has been a bipartisan issue, with members of both parties supporting the ban. Now some Republicans have come out in favor of it, that it would help. So it's kind of been a swap. But where do you stand on this, on offshore drilling off the coast of Florida?
Well, here's what I think is important, which is this. Number one, we need to become energy efficient in this country, and we need to move in that direction. We also need to be aware that I think everybody, you can look out the window. There's something happening out there. If you look at our weather, we are seeing what we call global warming. And so not only do we have to become energy independent, we have to look for ways to reduce our carbon footprint. And so, listen, I think that right now, knowing what the technology is, I don't like offshore drilling. But I do see that until we have the equivalent of landing the man on the moon, and guess what? I think we can. I think one day, if we continue to invest and incentivize in innovation and research and development, we will find the cleaner, cheaper fuel that will move us into the next century.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Hasner.
Thank you. I have a strong record from my time in the state legislature on protecting Florida's unique environment. I was Everglades Trust Legislator of the Year twice for securing critical funding for the Everglades. I passed a landmark law to protect our ocean waters, our coastal waters, and our ocean reefs. But I do support responsibly exploring for more oil and natural gas off of Florida's coast and throughout the rest of the country. And I do believe that that technology and innovation is here today, that we can be able to become more domestic energy secure through these new technologies for more oil and natural gas, and do it in a responsible way that protects our environment. And I think for things like the Keystone Pipeline, things that I support that are common sense no-brainers that Ms. Frankel opposes are those things that get us to energy security and independence.
Thank you. And now we'll go to the candidates asking a question of each other. We will allow 1 minute for response, 30 seconds for rebuttal. And since the last question went to Ms. Frankel, we will have Mr. Hasner ask this of Ms. Frankel.
Well, thank you, Randy, and thank you to everyone who participated today, and thank you to Mayor Frankel. My question for you is that, and I spoke about this earlier, would you join me in making a pledge and commitment to voluntarily term limit yourself, to refuse pay increases as a member of Congress, to refuse a congressional pension? I think that members of Congress need to live by the same set of rules as everybody else, and I hope that you will join me. You said it was admirable, and I'd like for you to join me in making this pledge.
Well, I'll tell you what. First of all, I do think it's admirable. But I also think it's a distracting. But I'll tell you what I'll do. Here's the deal. I'll consider your pledges. I want you to consider mine. My pledge is not to privatize Medicare. My pledge is not to give ultra-rich more tax breaks at the expense of taking loans from students. My pledge is not to ever take away the right of choice from women, because I trust women. If you can promise me that, and you take that pledge, I'll consider yours.
All right, 30 seconds back. Okay, then I guess you'll be asking the question of Mr. Hasner.
Mr. Hasner, you know, I do respect folks' differences on this issue of women's health. I'm sort of disappointed no one asked me about that today, because this is something that women and men who love women across the country are concerned about. You have said that you believe that Roe v. Wade was a mistake, and I can respect the difference of opinion there. I don't agree with it. But here's what I don't understand. When you were in the legislature, you voted for a bill that would force a woman, even a woman who was raped, to undergo an ultrasound, and in early stages of pregnancy, an invasive ultrasound before she could have access to a legal abortion. And I just want to know how you could vote for such a bill.
Ms. Frankel, first and foremost, let me say that that's not the facts of the bill, but I will tell you that women's health issues go far beyond abortion. These are personal issues for me. My wife Jillian is epileptic, and so we deal with the issues of pre-existing conditions and high prescription drug costs, and the fact that we're battling insurance companies all the time, like so many millions around us. Abortion isn't the only issue that women are concerned about, but it is a divisive issue. You won't be able to change my mind. I won't be able to change yours. I'm pro-life. I support exceptions for rape and incest and the life of the mother. But I'm proud that I have supporters from across the political spectrum, people who disagree with me on this issue and even some other issues, who are out there volunteering for my campaign, who have bumper stickers and yard signs on their cars and at home, who agree with me on the big issues that are so important to their children, to their families, and to their businesses, of getting America's fiscal house in order and getting our economy moving again.
Okay.
And I think we should be focused on issues that unite us, not divisive issues like this when we have the fiscal crisis.
Thank you, and then 30 seconds from Ms. Frankel before the closing statements.
Well, I will tell you something. We spend a lot of time talking about pocketbook issues for women and men and the economy. There's probably no bigger pocketbook issue for women than being able to be in control of their own personal health care. Because if they want to be able to get up and go to work and take care of their family, I trust them. I don't need to call the governor. I don't need to call my congressman to say, hey, what do you think I should do next about my health?
Okay, thank you. We will now have the closing statements, and after the toss of a coin, Mr. Hasner will go first.
Well, thank you to the panel, and thank you to everyone watching at home. My story is not different from many of yours. My parents were public school teachers and had $31 to their name when I was born. We moved to Florida when I was in elementary school. My wife Jillian and I live in Boca Raton, and I had the honor of serving in the State House representing my community. Today, Lois Frankel and I provided two very different visions for the future of our country, and we have many different policy disagreements. But the scare tactics are not going to solve the problems that we face as a country. And if we don't address the real looming challenges, they're only going to become more difficult to solve. You see, regardless of your political affiliation, I think we can all agree on this. Washington is broken, and both political parties are to blame for the fiscal mess that we're in. But this election isn't about Republicans or Democrats or conservatives or liberals. This election is all about math. And it's about what those numbers mean for you and your family, what they mean for your job and your small business, your retirement and your health security, and your children's education and your children's future. But Washington's unsustainable $1 trillion a year deficits and now our $16 trillion debt has stifled economic growth and job creation, and it has now also become our greatest national security threat. It's why I've been talking every single day about the things we need to do to responsibly reduce spending, get America's fiscal house in order just like you have to get your fiscal house in order at home, the things we need to do to create jobs and get our economy moving again. I'm proud of the support that I've received from all across the political spectrum, pro-jobs groups, and a lot of Democrats who support me on the issues that are so important for the future of our country. You can learn more about my campaign at adamhasner.com. I hope to earn your vote on November 6th, and I would be honored to serve you in the United States House of Representatives, and we'll work together to put America back on the move.
Ms. Frankel.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I've enjoyed being with you here, Mr. Hasner. You know, first of all, I want, for folks who don't know about me, you know, as a former legislator, I worked across party lines to help raise child care standards, to stop the spread of AIDS, to stop tobacco companies from targeting our kids. I learned when also to stand my ground without burning bridges. As mayor of West Palm Beach, I hope those of you who've been up here saw the big change over the past 10 years. It's safer, it's cleaner, it's more vibrant. It's a better place where people want to be. And as the mother of a U.S. Marine War veteran, I understand what it's like to watch your loved ones go and come back from war and what it means to families when Congress makes those kinds of decisions. So I'm prepared. I have the experience to go up to Washington. I roll up my sleeves and help break that gridlock that we both are disappointed in. But there is a clear choice. And Mr. Hasner, who has adopted this radical Ryan plan, wants to give tax breaks to people who don't need it, cut student loans, cut research for Alzheimer's research, raise the cost of prescription drugs. He supports a Medicare plan that ARP calls risky. It gives seniors vouchers that cost them thousands of more and puts them at the mercy of private insurance companies. And on the issue of women's health, oh my goodness, he even supported a bill that forces the victim of rape to undergo an unnecessary ultrasound. There's a better way. We need to address the deficit in unemployment by getting people back to work. Invest in infrastructure, in innovation, in education. Give tax breaks to companies that are going to keep jobs here. I'm going to protect Medicare. I'm not going to cut benefits. I'm going to cut waste. I'm going to look for more efficient ways to deliver health care. And I will tell you this, I trust women to make their own personal health care decisions.
Right.
I'm Lois Frankel. I'd be honored with your vote, and I can promise you this, when I get to Washington, I'll be on your side, always.
Thank you both. This concludes the debate.
Thanks.
Get full coverage today and tomorrow in the Palm Beach Post and on News Channel 5. The debate will be rebroadcast on News Channel 5 at noon Sunday and may be viewed by going to palmbeachpost.com. Early voting begins October 27th. Election day is November 6th. Thank you for watching, and see you at the polls.